So in our gardens and the farm as a whole, we think in terms of cyclical relationships. In that way, we're learning from the world around us, everything in the world. There's no rubbish dump in the world around us, there's no landfill. Everything that grows and lives in the world cycles into another form of life in the world. If a bird falls from a tree and dies, it gets broken down and consumed by the forest floor. Same with every leaf, every branch, every tree, every animal. There's a process of reintegration into the cycle of life. So the world around us works in cycles, so we think in the same way in terms of how we steward land. So in the garden, we prioritize a biological approach to soil, where we're constantly feeding the life in the soil so that the soil is at its greatest capability of breaking down, continually growing this incredible web of life that lives under here. Everything we pull out of the garden goes into the compost heap, that comes back into the garden. So in every way possible, we try and cycle nutrients back into the system so that there's no waste. In the world around us, particularly the food system, if I stick with that as an example, we can see food gets produced, grown, extracted from the land, waste often goes somewhere else. The food goes to the supermarket, so much of that gets wasted. We end up with heaps of food waste in the landfill, generates methane, methane goes into the atmosphere, contributes to the increase in greenhouse gases. If we take that same mentality that we're trying to approach land stewardship from, the cyclical regenerative approach, and look at our community relationships, it's the same kind of thing. We want to have reciprocal, cyclical relationships with various other social groups in the world around us. There's particularly amazing things happening in Wanganui in terms of food systems, localizing a regenerative food system here in Wanganui. That includes things like Kai Ora, the Wanganui Kai Collective, that is focused on trying to transform the food system, localize the food system. And so we participate in that as much as we can, and that's a long-term journey that's growing and changing every day. An example of that is our relationship with Easy Earth Compost. They're doing amazing stuff collecting food waste from cafes and restaurants around Wanganui. It's the first municipal compost initiative of its kind in Wanganui, and we have the pleasure of putting that compost straight on our beds. So while we do make some compost here, we're getting most of our compost from Easy Earth. It's not just great because it's good compost, but it's great because we know that it's contributing to the minimization of waste that's going into our landfills. By putting this compost, by supporting this enterprise and putting this compost on our beds, we feel like we're contributing to minimizing waste, food waste in Wanganui. And that's part of closing up that cycle. And if we can start providing food to local providers, local cafes and restaurants, and then their food scraps, which are essentially our food scraps, end up going to Easy Earth, then we're closing up that system and closing up that cycle. The more we can do that between all these different groups and organisations in Wanganui, the greater impact we can have on our environmental and social health.
So it's been really beautiful to be part of a local circular economy. We're collecting from some local businesses, turning that resource into compost, and that compost is going out to farms and gardens in Arohe. A really great example of that circular economy is with Honest Kitchen, where we've got a bin there that picks up the compostable packaging that their customers use, and then getting that material out to Waka Waka Farm and supporting their mara to grow permaculture vegetables and fruit for people in the community. Easy Earth began about 3 years ago. Saw an opportunity where things that were compostable there was no route for that to be happening. So a lot of compostable materials were going to landfill. So there was an opportunity locally to capture that resource and and turn it into compost. The business model is that we're a waste pickup service, so we make it really easy for people delivering a bin that's clean, and we do a weekly pickup and swap it for another clean bin. That happens in lots of different local businesses. We also do the school lunches compostable packaging pickup for many schools in the Rohe, and also we have a residential home collection scheme as well. Within our aerobic system here, there is little to no release of methane from the materials, whereas if it was in landfill in an anaerobic system, you're producing a high percentage of methane, and that's a very powerful greenhouse gas.
Kind of whatever you input, that is what you're going to output into the world. So even when you look at it from like an environmental point of view, what are we putting down onto the planet? Because what we're putting down onto the planet is where our crops are growing, it's what our animals are feeding out, and then it's that circle that comes back to what we're inputting. So we need to be inputting positive goodness into us, so then we can output positive energy back into the environment and into the world. So we try and source as much as possible local, and every day part of my job is seeing if we can just grab one more local supplier and working with the local vegetable suppliers. It's great in the morning just watching like them come with the big things and knowing that it's just come from a farm like literally 10 minutes down the road, and then we're able to do that, create this awesome kai with it, and then give that to like our customers. And I think that's something they really appreciate. Facility where we can actually compost a lot of our compostable containers, that's really important to us as well. And again, knowing that that actually gets composted here, it happens, and then that goes back out to our farms, and that just kind of comes right back to that whole circle of positive energy, and we're able to do that on every level. There's always improvements that need to be made, so it'll be exciting to see how much further we can take it as well.